you had your life review, you went into your own personal hell.
I was brought inside of the human beings who I hurt, experiencing the pain that I was giving them. The suffering I caused made me shameful because of the immensity of the purity of the light that was being spoken inside me. I was completely naked in front of the divine light. There was nothing about my life that I could hide. This forgiveness that was being offered to me has always existed. This forgiveness is love itself. In our humanity, we are made imperfect, and that imperfection is beauty itself.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wondered about heaven and hell and what they're really like, then do we have the Heaven is Beautiful show for you. Today I'll be talking with Peter Panagore, author, reverend, and survivor of one of the most incredible near-death experiences I've ever heard. That plus we'll talk about Jacob Marley in A Christmas Carol, coming back to life and going to jail, and what in the world Zoomass and pantomime, yeah I caught that, has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Peter. Are you ready to shine?
Only if you do.
Woohoo! Absolutely, my brother. So we're going to go right there. Before we dive right into things, how'd you end up freezing on the side of a slab of rock in Banff, Canada?
Youthful bravado. I was a mountain climber, backpacker. I wanted not to come back to Boston for vacation. I wanted to do an adventure. I found a partner who wanted to have an adventure. Our skill sets matched up, and off we went to Canada. I was an exchange student at Bozeman, Montana at the time. And we spent 8 days snow caving, and then we went to this ice climb. And I made a mistake. That's how the whole story really begins.
What would you say was the mistake?
I thought I could climb with an axe and a hammer instead of two axes. I did actually. Not only could I did. The problem is that there was the wrong equipment, and it slowed me down significantly, so that we ended up climbing to the top of our three pitches and arriving at sunset instead of hours before.
So when I read the gentleman's name is Tim, or at least in the book his name is Tim, and the innocent may be protected here. He put out an ad saying if anybody has blah, blah, blah experience. And I red flagged.
Did you?
Was this a cosmic setup?
Well, in hindsight, it became clear that that's exactly what it was. But in foresight, not so much. Yes. Previously, so one of the things that I haven't talked a lot about is 1 year before, on my March spring break from UMass Amherst.
Zoomass, yes.
Zoomass, that's right. Zoo disc, ultimate frisbee. Well, I went for almost a 10-day hike on the Appalachian Trail, and in the middle of this hike on the Appalachian Trail with another guy who's still a buddy of mine. And also an atheist, as it turns out. I kind of hanging around with atheists, I guess. Anyway, I had two out-of-body experiences of the mystical sort that I didn't cause happen, that were sort of a prelude to what happened to me on the mountain. But of course, I didn't know it at the time, and I certainly didn't completely understand what I had been shown. But looking back through it, after I had come back from the dead the first time, I could see, this was totally a setup. But I participated. I made choices.
You made choices. What's interesting to me, and I just released a couple videos on this because we're well down the same rabbit hole, is it seems to me, and in all my conversations on the other side of the veil, there is free will to a certain extent. However, there is a timeline where before you came in here, you basically sat around with somebody, and said, okay, this big event, I know that one's going to take place because that's going to help me. Our self, I'll call it small self, the me that is here inhabiting this body that is only aware of this, doesn't know about it, but your higher self does.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure it does. For sure it does. And it was setting me up the whole way along, as it turns out. But because I'm in my lower self most of the time here, a lot of it, I just couldn't see it for what it was as it was coming.
Yeah. So you climb, you're behind schedule. I've been there, not to the same extent that you have. So I have not done that level of climb, but I've been stuck before. And I've been stuck well past dark, and you're starting to go, do I have a plan B? And is there a plan C? And oh crap, we're on our own. You were not uniquely trained, but you were well versed in hypothermia and understanding that. And it sounds like you were cognitively aware enough to start the countdown.
From the moment the sun went below the horizon, even before that, the countdown started. Before we even reached the top of the climb, I knew that we were in serious trouble because the temperature was going to drop 30 degrees, which it did. And we were wet, and we were without a water, and we were without food enough for an overnight. It was a day climb. All the other teams, just to clarify for everybody, all the other teams that were climbing that day, they were all climbing for a day. Nobody brought up sleeping bags and backpacks and stuff. Nobody. So we reached the top of our climb, and immediately hypothermia began to set in with violent shivers. And that is it's the body trying to keep itself warm is what's going on there. And it expends a lot of energy to do that, which means that it depletes the energy reserves that you have while it's trying to survive. And that's the story of the whole night, is as we tried to survive, everything that we did depleted our energy supply. So the further we got away from the point of origin of this traverse and set of rappels, the closer we got to the ground, but the nearer we got to death. I knew, and I told Tim, and that's his real name, and I'm waiting for him to talk. Maybe he'll see this video, and I can finally talk to him. We tried to find him. We couldn't find him.
And Tim, I'm going to send so much love in the world, sending so much love your way.
Yes, I'm into that. So we knew immediately upon arrival at the top that it was a desperate situation and that death was what was going to happen. We either were going to save ourselves by trying to get off the mountain, or we were going to die, or both. There was no alternative to that. And we were desperate. We were both level-headed, which was excellent. It was one of the reasons why we went together, is what I learned to trust him, and we went snow caving for 8 days before this. But we also had taken a little tiny kind of a snowy trip a few weeks before into the mountains to kind of test each other out, see if we were compatible, see if we had skills. So I was uniquely, as you said, prepared for knowing what hypothermia does and is, because I was on the National Ski Patrol, and that's part of the deal, hypothermia. So you know about it. Part of my role in this whole trip was the first aid guy. Tim was the certified lead climber, and I was the rescue person. But it didn't really work out that way. We kind of rescued each other.
So we'll go from there. We've got you on the side of the rock, dangling on a rope, slipping, falling, slamming up against stone, waking up, coming conscious, because you'd already gone through all these different stages of hypothermia. It's amazing you were able to keep going at that point.
Willpower.
It's a beep, because willpower can actually get us in a lot of trouble, can't it?
Well, yes, except for it was willpower that was driven by survival. It was something I'd never encountered before. It's not like I was making a decision to drive myself forward. I had something much deeper than that inside of me that was animalistic, that was basic to my humanity, that I realized as this was ongoing, that this was I don't want, when I say base, I don't mean like down at the bottom, ugly. I mean root and foundational response, human response to the threat of danger. And so I wasn't willing myself forward by an active choice. I was driving myself forward out of a mammalian lost memory for survival.
And then there wasn't. There was a sense of peace, a sense of surrender.
I gave up. I can't do this anymore. I recognized the situation that I was in, and I released myself to it. I was no way going to be able to be saved. And I just relaxed into it. And so I died peacefully. I didn't die with turmoil or trauma. I died with relaxation. And my body shut down, my vision went black, but my consciousness stayed aware. And that was the strangest thing that had happened to me. It it left me in this state of confusion because my body no longer hurt, because I still felt like I was revived into some sort of health. I was more clearly thinking than I had been a moment before, but I was in darkness and I didn't understand what was going on.
I want to go into the whole story of the NDE. However, there's already such a theme here of the power of surrender, because that, in a sense, sets you up in a great way.
And that's the practice of selflessness that comes from a life of inner meditation throughout the rest of my life, is the practice of surrender. And it's the surrender of self. And so I surrendered. I surrendered to this experience because I had no choice. Once it began, I lost my autonomy. When this happened, the darkness expanded in front of me and became galactically wide. And in the far distant distance, a tiny star-like object appeared and rushed toward me faster than the speed of light, communicated to me telepathically without language, directly like a load of knowledge slamming into me. I'm taking you with me. And it reached inside me and took me. And it was intelligence. Intelligence, I can't explain to you how much greater its capacity for knowledge and understanding than I am. It was all comfort. It welcomed me inside itself, and I became relaxed. And I'm going to say something here that I've not talked about. Near-death experience is not a static event. Near-death experience is something that happens at a period of time, but it lives with a person evermore, forever on. Earlier in my life, this same angel had touched my life when I was 5 years old and had taken me to a place in heaven. So this angel was not unfamiliar to me, but only once I was inside it did I recognize it.
Please keep going, but you just gave me a major epiphany, which is rare on this show, but I love it.
Well, tell me, do tell.
Well, the experiences to the experiencer, the experience seemed to happen, well, like April 2nd, 2006. That's my first NDE. It seems to have happened at that time. But what you and I both know is time is not real. The closest I can explain to people is stacked, like pages on a book. You can go to any page you want, but it is not real. The book is there. It's a book. And because of that, the experience appears to have happened, my first one, April 2nd, 2006, but it also happened when I was 5 years old. And it also happened when. So, and I did have an experience at 5 years of age. So, but it's happening on and so there's lots of synchronicities here. It's happening without the concept of time. It always was, it always will be.
Yes. Yes and yes. Exactly so. So there are people who are natural born mystics. There are lots of mystics in the world. Maybe half the population has had a mystical experience of some kind, but there are people who have them very young and have them repeated in their lives. And every single experience that's a mystical experience gives you a new identity. It's when Jesus talks about being born again, it's not talking about what you conceive it to be. You become a new person. Your identity shifts. And so my identity shifted when I was 5. It left me a very different child than all my other siblings and friends. But when this angel came to me again, once I was inside of it, I knew who it was. It welcomed me into itself. And this timelessness thing extends through all these mystical experiences. They're always in this timeless space. And so they're always informing us inside of time from that single space.
Can you dive more into that, informing us in time from this single space?
So this timeless space, because it is always now, it's not just always in the now, it's like all time moving forward and backwards, upwards and downwards, inside and out. It's more than just linear time when I'm there. It's this eternal place. It always was, always is, and always will be. And we describe things that happen. I describe things that happen in a sequence of events, like there was a chronology to it. But I made that up. I made up the chronology in order to talk about it, in order to think it through and try to get some understanding. But in actuality, it all happened at once. There was all just this onceness to it. That onceness is connected to the oneness of each one of ourselves inside ourselves. And so when you have a mystical experience, and when a person has a mystical experience and they come back into their body, they bring, or the mystical experience happens to them when they're in their body, it leaves an opening in the soul, like a port inside of yourself, that if you look into this port, it brings you back to the oneness itself. And so if maybe you have 7 mystical experiences in your life, they all lead to the same place.
It's so cool. You call it a port. I call it a resonant frequency or a key, like a hotel key. It has a frequency to it. If you bring yourself back to that experience, it will, like you said, a portal, it will open up and you are back there and you can receive and understand more when you go back there. And I have a school of mysticism. And I know that everybody listening to this show is what I call an MIT, a mystic in training. You're into, if you're attracted to Peter's energy, if you're attracted to my energy, it's because you have that inside of you, which means you were gifted at one point in your life. You may have pushed it away. You may have been told by well-meaning loved ones, oh no, that's not real, or had that explained away, which may be part of why you were quiet for so many years afterwards. You didn't know how to express that and didn't want that negated. But you can find that key again and you can go back there.
You carry the key with you all the time. And all you need to do is look at it without attachment, without grasping. Just bring your mind to the remembrance of the experience. Don't judge it. Don't think about it. Don't put language on it. Just be in the energy of it. Be in the frequency of it. And the more you go into the frequency of it, the greater your capacity, the bigger your antenna becomes. The bigger your antenna becomes, the larger your battery storage is. It just fills and fills and fills, which is why for centuries around the world, mystical geniuses, Lao Tzu, Rumi, Hafez, Jesus, Muhammad, everybody practices some form of breath and mental focus, because in the emptiness of mind, there's space created for this frequency to be inside you. And so then you get to this understanding that it's not about language or knowledge whatsoever. We use language and knowledge to assist each other, to use analysis of experience in order to make communication between each other. But really, it's only this experience of beingness. And that's what happens in heaven. You get to be in a way that's veiled here. But while you're here, you can practice techniques to make yourself into a bigger frequency antenna, a receiver.
I was just teaching a class last night about imagining this portal of light, and that if you start to speak across the veil, what actually comes back is energy amplified for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is it's abundance. It's abundance, and it's beauty, and it's love, and it's an energetic charge. It gives grounding in the world. Contrarily to what you might think, it's not all airy-fairy of being in the clouds. Being in the clouds gives grounding on earth. It gives a new perspective, a new relationship, and a practicality of compassion and kindness.
Thank you. So we're going to dive into all of that. Let's go right now. You've hit the rock one time too many, so to speak. Basically, you surrendered into everything. You have been, for lack of another term, hoovered out of your body. you get to this space of no thing, of vast darkness. What is this no thingedness?
What is no thing?
Yes. And this is where, and you say it right in your book, this is where it's going to get trippy, because I'm going to have to try to use linear time and language to describe something that has no linear time or language.
And has no thingness.
Yes. There is nothing to anchor to.
There's nothing to anchor to. There's no thought. There's no brain. There's no molecules. There's no quarks, no muons, no star systems, no galaxies, no air, no person. No person. And so in this no thingness, there's also fullness. It's an emptiness that is all life itself. It's this paradoxical place of illumination and darkness. And it's not light, like we talk about light in frequencies. All of these things are metaphors. They're not the thing itself. The thing itself is experiential only. And so I end up in this, I get carried by this angel. I end up in this eternal nothingness. And I am a single orb of energy. I am much larger than my physical body. I remember myself. My first experience in here is, this is me. This is really me. That human being that never was me. This is who I am. This is my immortal self. But it's not a physical thing. My thinking was my seeing, was my understanding, was my knowledge, was my feeling. All these things were integrated into my one self. I am a self of oneness, and I am in a vast ocean, a universe without galaxies of darkness, but I can see. I can see in every direction at once, because there's some illumination inside it that's not light. It's greater than light. It's what makes light exist. And so I am in this space. I remember myself. I am calm. I'm understanding. I have no fear. I am myself again. And a portal opens in front of me, a doorway, like a waterfall cascading down. It just appears. And when I say in front of me, I don't mean like I had a face, but there was suddenly a portal, and I could see this with the whole of myself. I couldn't just see it with my soul eye. I felt its life coming from it. It's I've been talking about it these days as like a pearlescent waterfall. And it's thick, and it's got a solid surface, and I can see the surface, and I can see the depth of it, and I can see through it into a tunnel that travels incredibly far into this darkness, into this illumination. And I'm compelled to touch it. It's just the most beautiful colors, just colors and whiteness. It's just so beautiful, crystalline. And I touch it with my being. And as I touch it with my being, it fills me and surrounds me, and it becomes a voice speaking to me without sound. And I am in the presence of, I know instantaneously that I'm in the presence of the creator of the universe. That this is self-evidently the all life, the all living, the all beingness that creates and is infinite beyond my sight. And I can see, so I could see into this darkness, into this nothingness, but I couldn't see the end of it. I couldn't see infinity. I could see further than I ever could. And when this entity came, I called it the voice, the capital V. When it spoke to me, it was next to me, but it was so vast. It was all there was. It wasn't just like a being next to me. It's the entire place is the being itself. I'm inside of it. And it's right next to me, and it's very personal, and it fills inside me. And then all these things happen at once.
The thinking mind wants to go, what kind of questions were you having at that time? But I'm knowing that you are in a place of being, There was not. This is just, it is.
It just is. I was being done to, and I accepted what was being done to me because the presence was so overwhelmingly powerful that it's, they talk in the I think it's Moses on the mountain. He falls down on his knees and he says, like, your face is too bright. I can't look at your face. That's kind of what it's like. It's so immense that I just accept its immensity. It's like, whoa, okay.
I want to talk in a term that you haven't used. Immense, because I like playing with frequency. Song. To me, the song that was sung was your name.
The song that was sung was my name. So the song that was sung spoke my name, brought me into being. I become this. I heard my creation sung into being, and I see myself as soul, everlasting and immortal, as a photon, a singular superpositioned photon that is a frequency of light. Because what is light but frequency? And it is one of a 10 gazillion photons that make up the massive, immortal being of light itself. And I am the same as it, but I am part of it, less than it, a fragment of its eternal song. But it sung me into being, and I could see the length of the musical score of the length of my soul. It's pages and pages of notes, pages and pages of symphonies, and it's jazz and funk, and it runs, and it's so long. It's all of these things, and I can see a whole lot of my other lives. I can see all these other lives that I had lived, and they were minuscule. They were singular notes, but maybe they were stop notes. There were stops, those little stops you have in music. You take a breath. Maybe they're the little breaths. There's so few of them in comparison to the size of myself. They are so small in comparison to the size of myself that the divine light itself becomes the dominant feature of my experience. And I was shown inside those lives. I got to look inside a couple of those lives that seemed to be happening simultaneous to me. Timelessness again. And they were live, like I was living in these other worlds as I was looking inside them from the upside. And the two that I looked inside of, I didn't recognize what they were. I don't know what world they were or what life they were. I don't remember. At the time, all I remember was, this is different. This is not something I've seen before. So while this is happening and my name is called into being, which is still the sound that I hear inside myself now, this sound has never ceased for me.
Do you hear it as a vibration? How do you hear it?
It's like when I first came back, it was a roar. Like being next to Niagara Falls, just roaring, roaring, roaring. And over time, it became more of a buzz, a frequency, a vibration. It's the same energy. It's the same chi that I pursue with my spiritual life. It's the same thing. I am my higher self is this frequency. Is this, and it's that thing that I nurture in my spiritual life. It is who I am. And so when I feel it between me and you, I feel the sound of it inside of me. I feel, and it's the same sort of frequency as you are, because it knows itself. It sees itself. It hears itself. So this thing is all happening, and then I have a life review. I say then I have as if it was chronological.
Well, and this is what we may be titling. You had a brilliant show on I went through hell to get to heaven, and in a sense, that's how I'm positioning this for people today. Is you had your life review, you went into your own personal, made by you, not made by God's source universe. Didn't have to be this way, your own personal hell.
I made it chain by link by link to Go to Charles Dickens and Jacob Marley. I made it myself. I forged it, my decisions. And my decisions, some of them were intentional and some of them weren't intentional. But the experience I had was, and I'm gonna diverge here for a second. Have people ever wondered how God, how the divine, how source, how higher energy knows your story? It's because it lives your story with you. It is you in this story. And it's not only you in this story, it's everybody else in the story next to you too, experiencing their experience. And if they're with you, they experience the divine experiences from 2 points of view. And so what I did was I caused all this pain, and I was brought inside of the human beings who I hurt, experiencing the pain that I was giving them at the moment that I gave it to them in their lives from their point of view, and felt their physical, emotional, chemical, psychological suffering from the wounds that I gave them. And it was 10,000 times greater than I had thought it was, because I simultaneously, I had 2 points of view in this. I was inside the person who was suffering, whose pain I caused, and I was inside myself, seeing the situation in time itself, and hearing all of my justifications and reasons. And in comparison between these two, the suffering I caused made me shameful. And it made me shameful and guilty, not because of what I had done, not because of the choices that I made, but because of the immensity of the purity of the light that was being spoken inside me. I saw myself in comparison to purity. I was impurity, to put it in dualistic language, impurity compared to purity, love, abundance compared to selfishness. So the voice is speaking, it infills me, and it's speaking inside me mercy and forgiveness and love and light. And as it's speaking inside me, as I begin to listen to it through the love that I carried with me, my treasure that I brought from life, as I begin to listen to it, I get to see the universe and humanity as being like a matrix, like a simulation, all these things that people talk about, but it's not run by some big bad machine. It's code that's made from love. But the coding here in this world is everything is suffering. Everything eats something else. Everything living eats something else. And and sometimes that's intertribal, and they eat each other's property in human history. Or sometimes it's a black hole consuming a star in the middle of the galaxy. It's everything consumes. It's the nature of the universe to be imperfect. And because it's imperfect, so am I. And because the design is imperfect, the making of it is imperfect, I see myself with radical equality of all humans causing suffering, that there's no difference between the suffering that you cause in your life and the suffering that I cause in my life, and that it's a natural part of being human. You cause suffering in life, as Buddha said, all life is suffering. You can't escape causing the suffering. So not my fault is the message I was getting. Not your fault, Peter. I designed this. It's not your fault. I love you.
I designed this. If everything is God, is source, we don't have words for it. God, source, universe, divine, Akashic field, energy. If it all is no thing, and it was created by some thing, which is no thing, going back to the Tao, that which is the Tao, that which calls itself the Tao is not the Tao, then it means that even the imperfection that we are, we'll use that language, damned to exist with is perfect. The imperfection itself.
Listen to this guy.
it's the only game in town, because if we're looking at consciousness and expanding and growing, if I want to go back to the movie The Matrix and the architect in the Matrix kept on blowing up on people in this Keanu Reeves series. Didn't work. This artificial world didn't work because it was too perfect until we made the equation unbalanceable. That's what you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. And I want to let your audience know that I speak mysticism with a Christian accent because of my education, but I speak Taoism as well. And I just want to let everybody know that the imagery that I'm using is a different language metaphor for the same thing that's found all over the world. And the reason why I'm saying that is because Christianity, deservedly so, has a pretty bad reputation. But within the history of Christianity, there have been lots of mystics, just like in Taoism or Buddhism.
Or I was sitting here reading your beautiful book this morning, looking over at my loving wife, who is 6 months pregnant right now, and we're entering the third trimester. It's been quite the journey. We actually find out tomorrow, whether our baby will need a heart procedure when she's born or not. So we lost one of our 2 twins 2 months ago, and now.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So thank you. So that baby Hannah had to work to support the other baby Miraku, who actually helped baby Hannah to come through, because we'd had 3 miscarriages in a row. We find out tomorrow whether her heart is doing great, or if she needs, they call it minor, a minor heart procedure. But I'm looking over, I'm reading this book, I'm putting myself in your shoes of getting a life review of all of these times you hurt somebody. And I look to my loving wife and I'm like, I'm screwed.
Oh, that's the thing, right? That is the thing. So I felt like I was guilty for all these things that I had done. But I was naked. I was completely naked in front of the divine light. There was nothing about my life that I could hide. Nothing good and nothing bad. And the light itself was always, this forgiveness that was being offered to me has always existed. This isn't just for me. This forgiveness is love itself. It's the recognition that in our humanity, we are made imperfect, and that imperfection is beauty itself. It is goodness at its core, and it's always welcomed back to the Creator. And so that's what happened to me as I listened to the love that was being spoken to me, as I heard it inside my own suffering. My suffering dissolved into nothingness, and I was left with this infilling, expanding self full of beauty, love, truth, knowledge, adoration, bliss, awe, hope, peace, healing, wellness, wholeness. Everything I was the beauty, goodness of the divine itself, the purity, the unlimitedness of it, infilled me till it almost was too big. And one more note of it would have obliterated me back into the oneness itself and a fullness of it. I am utterly a new person, but not in my soul. In my soul, I am myself. The difference is that I know that here now. It's what I've always been and where I am from and where I'm going. It's who I am. And now I live here with the complications of family and mortgages and babies and blessings and sufferings. But I'm never separated from this core of myself.
There's a few things that popped to me. Thank you so much for sharing. The first was, I've only met Ram Dass one time here on Earth. It was at a Whole Foods in Maui. And I got to look into his eyes. And it was like looking into the eyes of a newborn. There was such a glitter. It was like looking into the universe itself. And one of his phrases that I've kidnapped, and I use it a lot, but I'm always crediting him, is what in essence you did without doing. To snuggle up with. You snuggled up with your wounds. You snuggled up with all of these hurts and pains, and then they were no more.
They have no reality. Before we came on, I was looking through your YouTube channel, and I saw Eben Alexander's More Real Than Real. That's exactly my experience. This was reality, and that this world was unreality, and not bad, not evil, not. It just wasn't the same as the truth. It's a truth with a lowercase t here because we're living it, but it's not a truth with an uppercase T.
Which is why, to me, we get, and it's interesting because I want to take amazing care of this planet. I certainly want to take amazing care of my kids. I want to take amazing care of so many things. And yet, it is all too easy to get wrapped up in the story. The story, this bad thing is happening, this bad people or corporation or this. And then we run the danger in quotes, because it is, like you said, one photon this lifetime. We run the danger of losing ourselves.
So how do you find yourself when you're in the dark? You turn on a light, and that light is inside yourself. I've found when I came back, I was lost. I was in darkness here, suffering and darkness and loneliness.
I will give a phrase for this, and we've got a good bleep key. Integration, from an NDE, integration is a...
Oh, we don't need to bleep that on my account. Yeah, it sure is. So I, in desperation, went back inside myself, and I found that the only way out is in. The only way to find the light is by looking inside yourself. And the more light space you create for light inside yourself, the less likely you are to believe the story that you're in. You still have to live the story. But when the story is overwhelming, I go inside. I take a few breaths. I silence my mind. I end my own duality inside myself with no thought process. And I sit inside the rest of peace. And in that rest of peace creates this reservoir inside myself that's cumulative over a lifetime, that then is expelled into the world through no effort. It just is. And so I still get anxious. I have worries. I have traumas that I'm working through and all those sorts of things, but none of them are real. And when I sit inside the place of silence, I get, when I say none of them are real, what I mean is that they're not lasting. They're all impermanent.
It sounds like the experience of hell, and I'm putting that in quotes, allowed you to experience yourself as punisher and punishment, to be able to let go of that. So now, when need be, and well, if you have a pulse, it can be quite frequently, I can speak for myself here, when that comes up, let's go back into the no thingness and dissolve it as well.
Exactly. And find strength there, and courage, and fortitude. And these things are the gifts that come from an inner life of connectedness.
It brings up, so while you were, what was one of the most poignant things in reading your story, as you're going through this and you're basically, you put yourself on a spit and you're roasting yourself, you're hearing this voice saying, I love you. I love you. I love you. That is when we go to no thingness, when we get into whether it's, call it meditation or centeredness or whatever that is for us, it may not have words, but that frequency of love is always there, isn't it?
Always. It is who you are. It's the core of your being. Goodness is the center of the self. And it's just layered over with thought. Go into the place of centeredness. You'll always find it there, waiting and willing for you. It's how I face my life. And because of my NDEs, my life there's been a lot of drama in my life. And some of it comes from my work and some of it comes from just living. But in all of the situations, going inside myself is where I found my actual strength to face what was outside of myself. One of the blessings that I have is that I know that I am not a human being. I know that I inhabit my body. I know where I'm from. I know who makes me, this ineffability, this non-being makes me live. And I know where I'm going. And all of that arises from the inner connection back to the place of the origin of myself, this frequency of my being called into being.
So I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of not living well, not making the best choices that I can make. And I believe that's a groove in my record that comes from thousands and thousands or millions of generations grooved in me, but it's still there. What is your greatest fear?
I can talk about it as my compulsion. I have a compulsion, and the compulsion came from my near-death experience to become the clearest channel that I could possibly become through the most work that I could apply to it in order to become a messenger for the message that speaks for itself. And if I have a single fear in my life, it's that I'm not able to do so effectively.
I called that for myself, not for you. And I know you've gone way past it. Because after NDE, and the reason I was gifted with NDE number 2 was because for me, it was ego came in the back door. Oh, you think you know these things now. Now you've got to live this. You've got to do this. You've got to teach this. You've got to the other thing. And my ego actually went in the other direction.
Humility is another word that is love. And so I've never confused myself with the divine self as a human being. I have seen myself and myself as a human being in comparison to the size of infinity. And I see the measure of myself as so. Once I saw the measure of myself, it aided my self non-attachment. So I've been practicing the whole loss of my ego in order to be the clearest channel possible. I don't want to, I have, my life shows that there was this, how do I explain this? Humility is more powerful than ego. Because in a humble state of emptiness, more light comes through. And when I on the few occasions in my life where I've tried to manipulate the light and use it for my own gain, it either ends up in a disaster or it shuts off in the external flow.
What I've found is the further that you get down this rabbit hole, the more you have instant karma. I love John Lennon's song, instant karma's gonna get you, knock you right upon your head when you're playing with lots of energy. If you play it for it, in a sense, for your own personal gain, whatever that means, the ego's gain, we'll say, poop's going down.
That's exactly the truth. And it doesn't take long to learn the lesson. For some people, I suppose it takes longer for others. This is the reason why I've never been interested in manifesting my desires in the world.
Well, that was where I was going to go with you next, is what has been your path. So I've had on some Buddhists a long time ago on the show who would say, I have sought a place of equanimity. And I'm going, Pulse, Quick, get the paddles. Ka-chunk. Let's get them. Let's bring them back to life here, because we're not talking about living a numb life. We're talking about living a high flyer life, but without being attached. How have you threaded that needle?
I have lived a high fire life, full of fun, adventure, drama, living my life to the fullest. I made a decision that I would have as much fun as I possibly could while I'm alive. So that's my baseline for my daily life. I have as much fun as I can, and that includes humor. But how did I thread the needle? The same way I've been talking about all the way along: selflessness. You thread the needle by becoming not attached to yourself. It's not this. When we talk about selflessness, it's not that your ego vanishes. It's your attachment to yourself that vanishes. It's your idea that you matter vanishes. It's the idea that you're in control vanishes. It's the idea that what you think is what you are vanishes. None of those things are real. Those things, what I think I am, that's an idea inside my head. I live my life with my fun and my family and my friends and my work, but I thread the needle by emptying myself. And the more I empty myself of myself, the less I am attached to the world that I create. And I have lots of things. I have lots of things on my desk. I could count the things on my desk. You'd be astounded. I've got at least 12 pencils, just counting pencils. Not counting the grains of sand or gravel in my yard. I mean, if you want to count the things of life, it's not about that, because all those things are immaterial. It's really about the connectedness on your interior life to the oneness of being that allows you to then connect to other people, to see them as human beings, to see them with compassion, to see their light inside them, and to behave appropriately to that. So it creates this sort of morality, but it's not a morality of rules and regulations. It's a morality of recognition. And it's the recognition that the other is yourself, even your enemy. And if you're a professional person or you've lived long enough in your life, you're bound to have an enemy. If you had one in grade school, you had an enemy. Even inside your enemy, this light shows itself. And so your approach to them becomes different. You still may have to defend against, the corporate overlords, whatever's going on in your life, but there's still the same as you.
I keep coming back in my head to Don Miguel Ruiz, author of The Four Agreements, also author of another brilliant book called The Actor. And really, in The Actor, it is we come here playing a role. The danger is that we believe the role is us. And so going back to this state, this natural state of being, we can let go for a moment of the role, but we can also recognize that everyone else is the same no-thingness and is playing their role, and that is not them. In fact, they may have the appearance of the greatest enemy to you or to the whole world for the story, for us all to evolve and expand, but that's still just the role that somebody gave them in the wings.
And that has consequences. I mean, those roles have real world consequences, but they don't have eternal consequences. Not in the ultimate sense.
So we're going to thread one more needle here. I'm having way too much fun with you, Peter. How do we thread the needle of it doesn't matter, but it does?
Oh, I love that one. That's the way that you learn to have fun, is because it matters, because love matters. It matters because caring matters. It matters because truth matters. There's a lot of reasons why living a loving life of compassion and kindness in a practical sense in the world that you're in makes a difference for humanity. If only for the person right in front of you. But it doesn't matter at all. If you, I am smaller than, I am the size of a helium atom in the universe, cosmically 13 billion light years, with all these, I don't know, 500 million or 500 billion galaxies and all these star systems and all these planets. And I am, on that scale, absolutely nothing at all.
But you also power the sun.
Well, see, there's the thing. I'm also part of the whole love that is all things that make everything exist. And so, and my, the way I see what I do in the world is the more empty I become, the larger the light flows through me. The more light comes into the world, the more it connects to others like me, like yourself, Michael, in the world. And where when it's a multiplying factor, the more light that comes into the world, the more light. It's not arithmetical. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 5 or 7. So my role, why I live my life the way I live, the purpose of my life is to bring as much light into the world of, in practical ways, helping people, doing my job, caring for my family, but being a channel of light into the world to combine it with all the other people. And there are tens of millions of us now, manufactured by science, medical science, bringing us back to life. Didn't bring me back to life the first time, but probably brought me back to life the second time. It's a powerful time in the history of the world because there are tens of millions of near-death experiencers who took what amounts to a cheater's route. They took a shortcut. We took a shortcut into this divine presence and come back into the world illuminated to whatever degree we are, casting the light upon the world, and it multiplies as this big, huge web of light, creating the opportunity for us to nudge humanity at this time of pending disaster. And I'm not talking politics here. I'm talking climate change. I'm talking, where I live, we have new fish out here. There are new fish living in the bay that have never lived here before. And the fish that used to be here, they've gone north to Canada. And it's a cataclysm that's coming with, what did I read the other day? The Southwest it's in the middle of a 1,200-year drought. Water systems, water dynamics, human nation states, coastal cities. It's not just now, it's the next century and more. We have a chance to nudge the world into light.
Which means that the shortcut that modern science, I'll put that in quotes, has given us was ordained or preordained as part of the system of an evolution of consciousness to help us to recognize. And people are grooving on these stories for a reason. They sense or feel or attracted to a truth. We'll use a capital T with that one. That then helps steer their consciousness in a different direction. And as we collectively, this is light worker after light worker after light worker come together, at some point, the frequency of the song changes and raises octaves.
That's right. For the whole symphony. And it is, and those people who are light workers, it's because it exists inside them. It's already there. And those who see. And the more of us that live inside this light, the more powerful it becomes, the more likely those who are in a dimness see more brightly. So it magnifies not only in terms of itself, but in terms of the numbers of the people who get awakened.
So on that note, I want to bring us back to these giant, magnificent doors that you did not go beyond for some reason. If I understand right, and you felt called, you actually told God, I've got to go back. What was going on?
So I had this expansion of oneness, of unity. I had a contraction back to some level of Peterness. And I talked about my I said, I can't go now. The voice said, it's time for you to come. I said, I can't go now. The voice said, why? I said, my parents are suffering. My sister had vanished, had run away and broke my family, my mom and my dad in particular, but all of us. And in an instant, I was swept across the breadth of heaven, this realm, this higher space, to the edge where the universe comes into being. And I was pushed outside in part of heaven, maintaining my heaven's self, my soul self. And I could see all of the universe, all of our universe, and all of the galaxies in our universe. And my vision was brought sort of compressed down into our galaxy, down to our star system, down to our Earth. And I could see a hologram of Earth and every living human being, like in real time. I could see everybody all at once. And everyone had inside of them a gold light. And this gold light was the core of their being. But everybody, the whole planet, was covered over with this big foam, like a big shroud covering the whole thing. And it blinded, but it wasn't just on top of everybody's head resting, it was in between everybody. And everybody was moving through it, and they couldn't perceive the veil, the foam, and they couldn't perceive the light. But I could see that everyone was made of this goodness, of this divine self. And then I said, then I saw my parents' faces, and I saw their suffering. I saw their lives without me. I saw their lives with me. I saw their eventuality in a moment's time, the wink of an eye, their presence in the same state of being that I was in. And while this is all going on, the voice announces to me inside of me, sweeping all the universe and universe upon universe into me, of love that was, is, and always will be. All is well, all has been well, all is well, because of this immense, infinite nature of divine love. All is well for all these people, all is well for all this universe, all is well eternally in everything. So don't worry about your parents, they're going to be fine. They'll be here in a minute, just wait. And but I still could see the length of their life, of their inside of time. And so I said, can I go back? And the voice said, you can go back. I said, can I come back to this state of oneness, to this beauty and bliss and love? And the voice said, yes, you can come back here, but we'd rather have you stay now. And I said, but can I go back? Yes, you can go back. I choose to live my life. And the voice said, you won't live your life, and flicked me back like a booger off the finger.
I got to pause you there. What a line. And this is for all of us. You won't live your life.
Twofold meaning for me. First is that I came back a new person. I was a new person. My life had ended. Life 1.0 over. You come back, you look the same, you sound the same, but you're not the same. You're a different person inhabiting the same old body. And because of that, you won't live your life. Your expectation about who you would have been, that doesn't exist anymore. Even if you want it to exist, it doesn't exist anymore. It's like you were going this way, and now you're going that way, and you can't turn back. You can't change perception. And the other part is, I live for the divine. I don't live for myself.
So it brings up a couple key questions. Then we'll start to wind things down. And Roo, he has a watch on him, I'm sure, the rooster. And he's going, it's time, Daddy. So question number one then is, why the second NDE, and what was that?
I spent all of my life every day praying for my death. I prayed. I drove myself inward.
You know the story of Carl Jung?
A little bit, yeah.
So he had the same challenge as you. After he came back, he said, "Whoops."
That's what I said. I said, "Whoops." I said, "Whoops." I felt like I was angry that I made a mistake. I was tricked. God didn't show me the contract. I didn't know what the fine print was. I'm stuck here. I'm laughing about it now because of my second NDE. So in between these two NDEs, I had all these other mystical journeys that continued to remake me and reform me. So by the time my second NDE came around, I was more grounded in the world, but I was still praying for my own death every single day. And this time I didn't go nearly as far, but I chose to come back for love's sake again. But the change that happened as a result is I don't pray for my death anymore. I'm completely cool with being here, and I have my the we began this conversation. I was talking about the Appalachian Trail and these two visions, and one of those visions, I was transported into this void where I was encased in this bubble of an angel, so that I could be in this space. And in this space, I became a column of fire. And inside, the fire was inside of me, above me and below me, greater than me. And the voice that has no sound says to me, "You won't be consumed." And that's what I have fought against my whole life until I died again. I've spent my life trying to live a life of non-attachment and surrender, but I clung to the core of myself. And my second near-death experience, it took away my desire to not surrender, to hold back a piece of myself for myself.
Universe is, okay, go there, twisted. It has, I had a coyote for 17 years, and
A pet coyote?
pet coyote. She was a hybrid, about 2/3 coyote, and she was certainly wily. And she was also the Buddha incarnate in coyote form. She was amazing and quite the trickster energy. And yes, she was really cool, and she taught me. I had 3 coyotes that raised me. I'd say I raised them for a handful of years, and then I got to keep Pumpkin. And I love you, Pumpkin. I love you, Pumpkin. I love you, Pumpkin. You got nailed with coyote trickster energy when you came back. You go, all right, send me back. Okay, you survived. You're in a ton of pain, and you get arrested for a speeding ticket. Now, here is jail, which metaphorically and literally, jail squeezed back into your body, jail squeezed back into a cell, and then a totaled car on top of it. Like, all right, if you want to work on remembering who and what you are, let me give you some experiences right away. No breather here.
Nope. Nope. And it all of that in combination left me a wreck. So I was already shattered from I was shattered from the trauma. I was shattered from dying. I was shattered from being reborn. And then I was shattered. We got arrested, spent all our money to get out of jail, literally in jail. And then the totaling car left me with a stutter and an emotional wreck. And as if I hadn't been stripped down to nothing enough.
I mean, it's we don't have to diagnose it, but you were gifted with some PTSD to to help guide you on your journey,
which is what happened. And so I realized pretty soon that I couldn't speak about this, not because I didn't want to, that was part of it, but because there were no words to talk about it. How could I explain this to anybody, this place of non-being? And so the trauma is what drove me inward. It became the best tool of my life. My desperation, loneliness, destruction of my former ego became the tool by which I sought the one thing that could help me.
In other words, to put it in other language, that was the fuel. That was the goodness. All that we judge as bad is actually the fuel of goodness carrying us forward.
It's how I am here today talking to you. That's all of this comes from that.
Let me grab Rue because we get to wrap this up. Before I grab Rue, where can people go to find your beautiful book, Heaven is Beautiful, and to find out more?
The book is everywhere. It's Barnes & Noble and Amazon all over the world. It's an Audible bestseller, and you can find it through peterpanagore.love. I have a specialty. I counsel mystics. I help people reintegrate from their NDE, but also from all kinds of mystical experiences. And I want to add that the book has been optioned for a film. And we had a major breakthrough this week after 2 years of writing hundreds of thousands of words for Act 1 and Act 2 for this. Big breakthrough, and it's plowing ahead. It's going great.
Yes, this is Rue, also known as Ruru.
Ruru. Oh, you are a beautiful bird. Do you know that? Do you know that about yourself? You do. And you're okay? Oh, well, you have a lot of humility, I can tell. Hello, beautiful bird.
I know, good boy. I know. So, you mentioned that you have kind of, I think I use the term hodgepodge, a combination spiritual practice. What is that? And then would you mind sharing with us this centering prayer?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I was fortunate when I came back to stumble into the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda and Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras. And I was also fortunate to be in Marceau's School of Mime and in the United States, and he taught Hatha Yoga in his techniques. So I combined the Kriya Yoga with the Hatha Yoga, and I had a background previously and was a regular practitioner of centering prayer. And all of these things I mashed together into my personalized spiritual development. But I can talk a little bit about the centering prayer part. That in the centering prayer is developed out of a combination of Theravada Buddhism and Christian monasticism through the works of the Cloud of Unknowing, Julian of Norwich, and Theravada Buddhism. The Trappist monks created a centering practice that is a mindfulness practice of singular focus with breath and chanting. And it's very simple. It is the practice of learning to use your mind, your thoughts, to control your thoughts, to still your thoughts, to empty your mind, to allow yourself just to rest in breath, and then deeper down into when the breath falls away, just into the peace. So basically it's this: 20 minutes, feet on the floor, high back, straight back chair, hands on your lap, or sit in a Zen style. I use the Jesus prayer, nod to my Christian upbringing, but you can pick any prayer that you want or any word phrase that has meaning to you. The simpler, the better. Light, love, beauty, joy, any single or a couple of words. You breathe in, you take your chant, your prayer, and you write it on your palm like a dragonfly sitting on your palm. And you don't grasp the dragonfly, you let it rest there, and you follow your breath into your belly, and then you follow your breath back out to your third eye, and back down your spine to your belly pit, and back up your spine to your third eye. And whenever your mind wanders, which it will, you just bring yourself back to your prayer, back to your chant, back to your mantra, again 10,000 times, over and over again. And what happens is this, is that the breath and the mind become locked together. They ride together, and then the prayer falls away, the chant falls away, and your mind just becomes no thought breath, follow just breath. And then eventually the breath falls away and you just be. And practice, it's called the practice of meditation, because you have to practice it like everything else. And it's very simple, and the power is this. The power is that when the light is present inside yourself, why is it prayer instead of meditation? Why is it's the same practice of meditation. It's the same emptiness, except for that I aim my heart at the divine. That's the only difference. And so I aim my heart at the divine, I empty myself of myself, and the more space I have inside myself for the silence, the more it communicates with the silence in you. The light in me sees the light in you. And in the practice, in a group setting of practice of meditation, the group resonance, the group vibration, the gain on the volume becomes much larger than the participants in the group could do alone individually. So it shares itself. And as it shares itself, it makes the meditation prayer practice deeper for everybody.
Thank you so much. Get to wrap this up. This has been true genius, brilliant. Any last words that you want to share with people, Peter?
Love is the treasure of life. Love is the treasure of heaven. Don't beat yourself up. Just get up and start over again. Always, always the beginner.
Woohoo! So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get heaven is beautiful. Plug into the all that there is, every chance, that no-thingness, every chance you can. And above and beyond all else, shine bright. Woohoo! What a beautiful, beautiful soul. What an amazing interview. What an incredible story from hell to heaven and back with Peter Panagore. On that note, if you want to learn more how you can communicate with Spirit, how you can communicate with the other side of the veil, then go to automaticwriting.com and check out our program, the Automatic Writing Experience and book, to help you be able to quickly and easy communicate with God, with Source, with Spirit, and with live classes. That's automaticwriting.com. On that note, we have our School of Mystics 4 Wednesdays a month. You can find out about that at inspirenationuniversity.com. You click the join button down below. We have our Mystic Circle with lots of behind the scenes videos and stories and even Rue. Lots of videos with Rue as well. Please share this with the world if you like it. Let's all help change the world together. So share, share, share. Big thumbs up, comments below. Click the subscribe and bell icon to be notified of our next show, live event, or upcoming premiere. Live events every Monday night. Here's the next show to check out. Love you guys so, so much. Keep on shining bright. Woohoo! How does it get any better than this, Rue? How does it get any better than this?